And to join me, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's broadcasting's most valuable podcaster and my most valuable friend, the great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again with all my value, or whatever, your most valuable friend.
Well, we haven't done this in a couple of weeks. How can I miss you if you don't go away? And you went away and we all missed you. Haven't done this in a couple of weeks and I've almost out of practice. So hopefully you can lead me. This is my show today, but you're going to be the star because it's your triumphant return. It's like, Lawler coming back after the fatal heart attack or Punk returning in Chicago.
Not necessarily like either one of those situations, but sure.
Like Mussolini!
Oh, God.
And here he is.
Maybe I should have taken off another week.
Well, we want to thank Solomon Grundy for filling in last week on the experience, and we apologize for the lack of a drive-through this week, but we're going to rectify that. Or last week, we're going to rectify that this week, and we're back in the saddle again after a rough couple of weeks.
Yeah, and let me thank everyone because it was kind of amazing to see how many people responded on Twitter and via email, and the ones who have my text texted me, and thank you to everyone. It meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to my family. And, little cool things like my brother, who was a wrestling fan when he was a kid and is no longer a wrestling fan. They ran him off too. His favorite wrestler from childhood texted me. And it meant something to him that, wow, this wrestler who I liked when I was a kid, who I spent so much time watching, he's thinking of my father for just a few minutes. So there were things like that, and just so many people. I wish I had the time to respond to everyone. I don't know if it's possible, but thank you. I read just about everything that came in. I think maybe everything. Thank you. For those of you unaware, the reason there was no drive-thru, and I guess I'm going to have to explain this on the drive-thru for those people that don't listen to the experience too.
Oh, they listen to everything.
A few months ago, my father suddenly got gravely ill in Florida, and I had to take off and go down there, and it went from him being a relatively healthy older man to stage 4 cancer, and it was a lot to deal with and a lot of things that they couldn't figure out at first, and eventually I brought him up here to get better treatment in the tri-state area, and I had my family here, and long story short, after a few months of a lot of things going on, he passed away this past week. But if you could find any good to get out of that fact that he died so early, which, was upsetting, we were all here. He was in a last family home. His grandkids were all here. His children were all here. And like I said, that's why I was off the show last week. That's why Luke Hippelman subbed for me over the summer. And that's why there was no drive-thru this week. And once again, thank you to everyone. And thank you to you and Stacy. You guys were tremendous, and I really appreciate it.
Well, and also we've been doing morbid humor, little cryptic remarks about what day is this, and have we recorded part of this show or whatever, and we've been doing some Frankenstein show put-togethers over the past few months, and people obviously didn't know what the situation was at that point, and they think, what are they fucking around with each other about, and why can't these shows come out on time? I told everybody last week that if it had been me in the position that you've been in with things you've had to deal with, I'd have announced, hey, everybody, I'll see you in a couple of months. So it's amazing that you were able to, and it's not only your dedication, but also you really actually, for some reason, like doing this. Well, I guess it's my sparkling wit and charming personality, but
I guess
I couldn't hardly run you off, but we've been trying to make it work. Things should be smoother sailing with the podcast from here on out. And like I said, it's been a rough couple months, but I do as well appreciate everybody's, input once they found out, what was going on.
It really is amazing now that, we can look back a little bit on the last quarter of the year, the last several months, how many episodes, major medical things happened in the middle of, that we had to drop the episode, we had to pick things back up, we had to come back the next day or hours later. My father literally died on the table during a show, and we had to drop everything, and I had to get everything taken care of, and then we picked the show back up, and the goal was, let's do this professionally. There's a lot of people who really love this show, and let's give them what they what they pay for. They pay nothing. Let's give them what they pay for.
Yeah, let's give them what they pay for. Well, and that's exactly what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. Bupkis is what you get from us. It was comedic that the days that I did have, because that was not made up. I did have painters hanging off the house, and everything happened at the same time. The remodel, and that's drug on and got more complicated, and people crawling all over the house, and the hammering and the clanging and the banging and the noise.
There were days where we started going, and then you had to take a break to go pay someone or direct someone or push someone. And then you came back, and minutes later, I had to take a break because an oncologist called or a doctor called. There were multiple recording sessions like that. It's amazing what we've churned out in the last few months.
Churn may be the right word for it. But anyway, today, hopefully this will be an episode that'll really churn your folks' stomach. Yeah, well, before we go to the main event of War Games and what set it up on Friday night, I know that there's all kinds of the Arcadian Vanguard Network goes on without all of us. I know there's all kinds of programs on this week, and as well, you've got some audio from a program in the archive you want to play us.
That's right. Of course, get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Of course, every day for free, The Wrestling News and your morning wrestling newscast. Go to thewrestlingnews.com or subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts to The Wrestling News for, again, free daily wrestling news, no clickbait, no paywall, just The Wrestling News. But Jim, this week when I talk about the 605 Super Podcast, the Mothership! I don't know how I feel about doing it into a drum roll. That's kind of weird. But I want to talk about an episode in the archive because so many people, as I said at the top of the show, I can't ever thank everyone enough because it was so touching how many people have reached out and gotten in touch about the passing of my father. And I want to play a clip from the 605 Super Podcast archives. This was the very first time he appeared twice, the first time my father ever appeared on the show. For everyone that's thought about him and thought about my family, you get to hear the real artifact right here. My father was not a wrestling fan at all. However, he drove me to wrestling shows. He took me to see wrestling. He supported what I liked. But I had him on the show because he had a tendency to, when flipping through the channels, seeing wrestling on and watching it long enough to hear something and then telling me what he thought he saw. And this included him discovering a tag team in the GWF on ESPN Classic called Sun and Fun, the Slip House Boys. There's no record, and we've all looked, for a team called Sun and Fun or the Slip House Boys. But here it is from the archives of the 605 Super Podcast, me and my father talking a little bit about wrestling and the Slip House Boys. I am happy to welcome to the Super Podcast someone who has been mentioned here on the air many times, a man who is responsible for the Slip House Boys, a man who I know very well, and that's my father. Pop, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. How's everything?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to have you here on the air. So I guess before we say anything, I am a big wrestling fan. I've always been. You know that. But you're not. Is that correct?
No, when I was a little kid, I used to watch Bobo Brazil, Argentina Apollo, Gordo Chihuahua,
Who?
Arnold Skolin. Gordo Chihuahua, a little Mexican guy.
Is it? Okay, I thought you were making up a name.
Belly.
Okay.
No, Gordo Chihuahua. And it used to be on in the New York area. I seem to remember it was on late, but it was also on early Saturday mornings, I think, on Channel 9, WOR, or whatever it was called back then. So, but it was like watching something from your high school lunchroom. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know, when I got into wrestling, I remember you mentioning a lot of these names. You talked about Gorilla Monsoon and Killer Kowalski and Bruno.
Right, Gorilla, right.
But
right.
You never liked it. In fact, it was the opposite. You always put it down. Why didn't you like professional wrestling?
Because it was no challenge. You knew who was going to win. I mean, they're good athletes. I can't tell you they're not good athletes, but it was too phony. You know what I mean? It wasn't real. I mean, it wasn't real. You know what I'm saying? It was entertaining maybe to some people, but I was athletic, and it just was, like I said, you knew who was going to win. You knew this. The ref was like, had cerebral palsy. He couldn't do two things at once. You know what I'm saying?
Well, okay, I didn't know you were going to say that. But, I know at times some of your friends watched wrestling or attended wrestling. I know when you went to school in Colorado, one of your best friends regularly watched the AWA. I know one of your friends in New York in the late 70s would go to Madison Square Garden to see Bob Backlund and Dusty Rhodes. Did any of your friends ever try to get you to watch wrestling or attend wrestling?
Absolutely not. The only one who attended wrestling, I used to do business with somebody who got tickets all the time because they had some kind of, I can't remember the name, some kind of action figure wrestlers.
You're not talking about Cooperman, are you?
Yes, yeah. Didn't he have like action plaques or something?
He didn't have action figures, and that wasn't even who I was talking about. Cooperman had that company Star Trek, where they took images of wrestlers or anything, and they would kind of make it 3D. They would take the actual body and separate it from the rest of the photography so that it popped out of the image.
No, it was a big seller. I mean, when I was a kid, the announcer was, I think, Vince McMahon's father.
No, he never announced.
He didn't? So who was I can't remember who it wasn't Claude Kirshner, so.
Ray Morgan. Ray Morgan would have been the announcer.
Glasses?
Yes.
I remember. He looked like Bill Cullen or something. I don't know if you know who Bill Cullen was.
No, who's that?
He used to do the Price is Right many years ago.
Well, again, you never attended wrestling. You didn't watch wrestling, even at times when some of your friends
Well,
did.
I would put it this way. If it was between that and Chatty Patty or somebody, I'd watch wrestling, But, I was more into, like, Abbott and Costello's show, The Three Stooges, Superman. It was,
I understand, but when I became a big wrestling fan, you did take me to some wrestling events. Do you have any?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any moments that stand out? Any wrestling events and wrestlers that you saw?
When I think Rowdy Piper had his pants pulled down when trying to climb out of the ring at a steel cage.
No, it was the other way around. He pulled down the pants of Ravishing Rick Rude.
He pulled down the pants, Ravishing Rick Rude. I remember Andre the Giant was gigantic, and Hulk Hogan, I'd kick his ass.
Well, that's my dad. That's certainly something I heard a lot throughout the years. So you never really got into it. What did you think when I became a big wrestling fan?
At first, I thought, he'll grow out of this. But he never grew out of it. And you know what? Each his own. That's the way of life philosophy. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't.
What did you think in the 90s when I had a little bit of an enterprise going with tapes, where I would dub tapes?
It was good for you. You were into it, and you enjoyed it. And it wasn't for me to say. I mean, wasn't for me. I remember driving you to New Jersey. And
that's right.
Cherry Hill, New Jersey, I think.
Yeah, that's before I had my license. You took me out there for some...
And we had some wrestlers stay at our house, and they were very nice guys. But, I don't know if they're all brain dead today or whatever, but I don't know.
Well, I know that you have come up on this show several times because I've mentioned to the listeners that I've spoken to you after, I don't know if you drank a bottle of wine or if you're just watching TV and don't want to change the channel, but you end up watching classic wrestling on ESPN Classic.
Right. Some of that, I've watched some of that. I even told you the name of the acts. I don't even remember, but it was a joke. I mean, really.
Why was it a joke?
You know what I mean?
No, why? Tell me.
It was a paycheck for these guys. I mean, some guy must have weighed 280 pounds and he was 5'4". You know what I'm saying? Just those,
But you watch it. But you end up watching.
I just watched it. Well, just to see what was going on, and it was like I said. The key to all the matches were the referees. The referees were like, I guess they were told to look in the audience, or play with their zipper. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? They just.
Well, do any of these wrestlers that you've seen on these shows stand out, or does anything about these shows stand out?
Well, since I live in Palm Beach County in Florida, there used to be a guy, Mr. Palm Beach. I forgot his name.
Yeah, you mentioned
with long flowing hair and whatever, but
we did mention that on the air.
But what his real name is, I couldn't tell you.
The thing that made you famous on the show was when you said you saw, this is what you told me. Tell me if I'm wrong. You told me that you saw a tag team named Sun and Fun, the Slip House Boys, correct?
Right. I think so, yes.
Now, I have gone back, and I know a lot of the listeners have gone back. There is no evidence whatsoever of a tag team called the Slip House Boys. No one knows what a Slip House even is, let alone a team in wrestling named Sun and Fun.
I think they were from either Los Angeles or San Diego. That's what I seem to recall. They were from that area, Los Angeles or San Diego. But, it was fodder. But, I'll tell you this. Who was the toughest guy? Like you say, Andre the Giant or whatever? Will Chamberlain would have kicked his ass. That's all I'm going to say.
You see, this is what I grew up with. Any wrestler I like, my dad would name a real athlete or himself who would kick their ass. Well, Pop, let me ask you this. What is a slip house?
I don't know. Not a whorehouse, so I really don't know what it is.
I mean, that's the question. What would a slip house be?
I don't know, but I think I wrote it down and told you that at the time. But the two good wrestlers, I'm pretty sure, were from L.A. or San Diego.
Okay, we pretty much think we have figured out who it is you saw, which makes it even more interesting that the name you came up with was Sun and Fun, the Slip House Boys.
Right.
Because there's no mention of them whatsoever. Now, the stuff you're watching is on ESPN Classic. That's Global Wrestling Federation from Dallas, Texas.
Right.
What do you think of that? What do you think of the look of it, the ambiance? What are your feelings about Global Wrestling Federation?
It looks like a skanky gym. It looks like the boys' locker room and gym. You know what I mean? With looks like the audience is all from Florida. No, I'm just,
You're living in Florida.
I know that, but and I don't know. You know what I mean? You should get a match together, me against Donald Trump. Man, that'll be it.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you, I remember, I became a big wrestling fan in '89. Of course, the cartoon show Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling was on. Beginning in, I think maybe 1985, it was on for a few years. I had action figures, but I didn't actually watch wrestling. But during this period of time where I knew of wrestling, but I didn't watch it, you recorded WrestleMania 3, which I ended up having on video when I became a fan. But you also used to record wrestling, if I remember right, for people in your office. Like some of your employees would ask you to record it for them, right?
I don't remember. I do know I watched pay-per-view boxing with them, and I told them, never forget one fight, one guy came over, got loaded.
Whoa. Stop. I know the story.
Yeah.
You can't tell the story unless you say his name or at least his nickname at work.
I can't. I want to. Hercules was his nickname.
So Hercules came over the house. He lived. Where did he
got drunk, and then whatever fight, it was a big fight. I think it was Hagler or Hearns.
No. It was Tyson Spinks.
It was?
Which ended in 44 seconds. Yes, it was.
Right.
Tyson
and I told him the wrong guy won, I think. Yeah. And he told everyone what a fight, it was Spinks killed him or whatever. And
well,
hello, Mike. No.
Yeah, well, there you go. None of them are listening. You don't have to worry about offending anyone in that world who's listening. You already threatened to kick the ass of Hulk Hogan, so I think
well, he lives on the other side of the state from here.
Yeah.
And I could talk like that. My hair's as long as his.
Is that how you think?
And I think I'm older than him too. So
give me your impression of a wrestler interview from someone who isn't a wrestling fan.
What do you mean an impression?
Like, how do you think they sound?
Like they just came off the boat. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what that is you're doing. Okay, well, Pop, here's where I want to ask you something. So many of the listeners have been entertained by these stories about you watching classic wrestling and then interpreting not just what you see, but also the names of the wrestlers.
Right.
I would like to create a new segment on the show, somewhat semi-regular, where I send you a DVD of classic wrestling, something before 1989.
Well, if I had a machine, I got all your tapes in my garage.
Oh, yeah?
All those wrestling tapes you used to have?
But you don't have a VCR?
Somewhere in my garage.
Well, you don't have all of them. You have a lot of the ones I didn't take with me. Yes. But you have a DVD player, correct?
Yes.
So I could send you a DVD.
I have Blu-ray, DVD.
Well, I'll send you something of classic wrestling. Would you review it for the program?
Yeah, why not?
But you can't take notes. That's the only catch. You have to go
okay.
based on what you
fine.
remember.
I'll watch it and get gas. So that's all.
What? Why would you?
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
So there we go. You are committing to being willing, being able to do this segment where we're going to send you some classic wrestling. We'll get some suggestions from the listeners, and you will come on the program and say what it is you saw, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, and whatever other comments you have about it.
All right. Say hello. I'll say hello to everyone. Hello. Goodbye. And that's it. That's what it is.
Well, there it is, a clip from the 605 Super Podcast archives, my father and myself on the show. You could hear more of the 605 Super Podcast at 605pod.com or find it wherever you find your favorite podcast, the 605 Super Podcast, the mothership. And once again, thank you to everyone who's reached out. I really do appreciate it.
How old were you the first time you came to a Smoky Mountain Fan Week?
14.
How did you present that to your dad? Like, yeah, I'm gonna go down to East Tennessee for a week and hang out by myself with a bunch of other wrestling fans going to wrestling shows every night.
Well, I had already gone to summer camp for several years.
Oh, summer camp is just exactly like Smoky Mountain Fan Week.
No, I mean, there's more mature people usually at summer camp. No, but
exactly.
I aged at a summer camp, and I needed something to do with my summer when I was 14. And I was a big wrestling fan, and I was getting the tapes, and I was getting the sheets, and I knew what was going on, and I was a big Jim Cornette fan, and a big fan of other people in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I convinced them to let me go down. They knew I was responsible. I could handle myself if I had to, even though I was a little kid. I was pretty street smart, and everything worked out accordingly.
And the accommodations were wonderful over at the Westtown Inn.
The Westtown Inn the first year. The second year we had, I think, a Holiday Inn over by the Denny's in Knoxville. And I only hit one fan. So there you go.
And it was just the once.
It was just the once. And he deserved it. He egged me on.
He did.
And he got it.
He certainly got egged.